What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video. And in today's video, we are going to be doing the Spotlight review for Ramlethal from the Guilty Gear collaboration. But before we get into all of that more, make sure if you guys are new here to the channel and you enjoy daily King of Fighters All-Star content such as this, please smash that like button and subscribe. And let's go ahead and get into the Spotlight for Ramlethal Valentine. So first up here, let's go ahead and talk about the typing and the leadership ability. Ramlethal is going to be a yellow defensive type, which is going to be called for high levels of Reviving Hell's Dungeon, so definitely going to be a typing that is going to find itself being called for in the game specifically, and so you'll love to see it. When it comes to the leadership ability, this character is going to increase Guilty Gear fighters' attack by 45% and their power charge rate by 20%. This is definitely worth noting because this is going to be the best leadership ability for the Guilty Gear characters for things such as Immortals, and considering the fact that almost all of these characters are going to have some of the longest finishers in the entire game, and as we've already established here on the channel, are going to be extremely powerful against Immortals as a result. This is going to be a very sought after leadership ability, and it is definitely going to be something that you are going to want to consider when you are going for this character, because this is going to be something that could definitely bear itself out to a lot of new players out there to be extremely important, and could even single-handedly, if you have some of these other Guilty Gear characters to pair alongside her, help you to clear almost any Immortal in the game with ease, as long as you make the proper investment into your Guilty Gear characters. Now, when it comes to Ramlethal, one other thing is of note here: she is not going to be an SS or a BS character. Instead, Ramlethal is going to be a normal AS character. This means that this character is going to have a shorter awakening rotation, and also going to be a lot easier to build up because you can use dimensional invitations to build her instead of needing dupe memories, which is worth noting because this is going to make this character extremely accessible for new players, which is going to be important because right now with this collaboration, or with collaborations in general, there tends to be a lot of new faces and a lot of new players that are going to be downloading and playing the game for the first time. Therefore, Ramlethal is going to offer a ton of value if you are in those camps. But in general, this character is going to be extremely powerful in all these regards, so definitely a lot of good stuff here to start off the video. Next up here, let's go ahead and talk about the cores. So when we talk about the cores, the first thing that we are going to talk about here is going to be that 30% power charge rate increase. As we've already mentioned, Ramlethal is going to have an extremely long finisher for her 3PG finisher, so having that 30% power charge rate increase is only going to help her to fire that off just that much more often, so you'll love to see it. We also have some other things of note in here, such as increasing our damage by 18% upon landing a critical hit, and then we also have an increase to our critical rate and our attack. In general, these crit buffs here are going to be beneficial when you want to attach a Guilty Gear set to this character as well. So that is definitely going to be something we talk about here momentarily when we get to the cards, but in general, I just figured I would note that for you guys. Next up here, when we get into the exclusive cores, we have Agent of the Merciless Revelation. This is going to offer a 70% chance to apply fear on the attacker for 2 seconds when attacked on a cooldown of 15 seconds, with a PvP exclusive to have a 70% chance to disable the attacker's special moves for 10 seconds and decrease their power charge rate by 50% on a cooldown of 15 seconds. So in general, as I'm sure you guys are aware, fear is definitely going to be one of the most, no pun intended, feared CCs in the entire game. So in general, anytime you see fear on a kit, this is going to be welcome. And then that PvP exclusive of a 70% chance to disable the attacker's special moves for 10 seconds is absolutely devastating, and definitely going to be something that is going to set this character apart in a big way as far as their performance in things such as Championship. So definitely worth noting, and you're also going to be neutering the power charge rate by 50% as well. So this character is definitely not going to allow their opponent to be firing off any type of finishers in a fight, which is something that is pretty interesting and definitely going to make this character worthwhile in things such as Championship. Now, when it comes to process of finding emotions, we have a 40% chance to deal additional damage equal to 650% of our attack upon landing an attack, guard included, on a cooldown of 10 seconds, and then we have a PvP exclusive that applies the target's buffs from their active skills to the caster for 5 seconds upon landing an active skill on a cooldown of 10 seconds, and finally we have the Guilty Gear exclusive core that all of these characters are going to share, in which she is increasing her attack by 35% 50% if her HP is 50% or more, and decreases damage received by 70% for 3 seconds when accumulated attacks received, guard included, reaches 5 times on a cooldown of 15 seconds. So in general, that 40% chance to deal additional damage equal to 650% of attack upon landing an attack is going to be devastating. This is going to be something you will definitely notice in your damage whenever you are on your awakening spam, as an example, in things such as Guild Raid, and you will see the damage numbers all of a sudden just jump all of a sudden. That is going to be partially to do with the fact that she has this core here. We've seen this type of core on other top tier damage dealers in the past, and while Ramlethal definitely is not in the Uber tier when it comes to damage, this is definitely going to help her to get at least somewhat close to some of the numbers that we've seen with some of these limited banner characters. So in general, an extremely good core. When it comes to the PvP exclusive, basically you're going to be able to take the buffs from your opponent and add them to yourself. This is of course going to be something that is going to be very useful and crippling in Championship. So again, another really nice PvP exclusive. And then when it comes to the Guilty Gear exclusive core, we've already talked about this one several times in previous videos, so I'm not going to spend much time here. In general, a pretty nice little core here, and this is going to be one that, while it isn't anywhere near as powerful as some of the ones we've seen in the past, it is still definitely going to be very useful for this character. So in general, when it comes to the cores, definitely going to have some really strong assets here. So let's now go ahead and see how these pair up and what we got to look at when we talk about the skills. On the S1, we are going to be able to increase our attack by 35% for 7 seconds, while also applying Blackout to the target for 9 seconds upon landing a skill, and dealing Starlight damage equal to 5.5 times of the remaining Starlight damage, and removing Starlight when attacking an enemy affected by Starlight on a cooldown of 1 second. So as you guys can see here, we are going to be able to apply Darkness as well as having Starlight Explosion. When it comes to the animation on the S1, this is going to be a full screen. However, at full screen distance, it can be a little bit slow in catching up to the opponent, and it is not going to have off the ground capability. However, it does have a nice long XY axis on it, so this is going to group mobs extremely well. On the S2, we are going to apply Fear to the enemy for 3 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included, have Radiant damage to the target for 9 seconds upon landing a skill, and deal Darkness damage equal to 5.5 times of the remaining Darkness damage, and remove Darkness when attacking an enemy in Darkness on a cooldown of 1 second. Animation-wise, this is going to be an extremely quick animation. It is going to be full screen, and it is also going to boast off the ground. In general, as you guys have noticed, there are going to be double explosions on this kit, so you'll just have to be careful what skill rotations you use depending on where you're at in what mode. Moving on now to the S3, we are going to have our source of hyper armor for 3 seconds, as well as our interrupt, which is going to be limited to standing or being airborne. So in general, when it comes to this skill here, this is, in my opinion, going to be her best overall skill. As you guys can see, basically what this is going to do is this is going to offer you off the ground as well as full screen capability. It is going to group mobs extremely well, and it's also going to have a very generous interrupt on it, as well as your hyper armor. This has become standard on characters recently, but she has the extra added utility of being standing or airborne. The core finisher is going to leave a lot to be desired, as it is going to be on the shorter end at 4 to 5 seconds, but it does apply Darkness damage equal to 20% of attack every 1 second for 10 seconds upon landing a skill, as well as the same for Starlight, so you have double dot applications, which is extremely important for Guild Raid. On the 3PG finisher, we are going to increase our attack by 12% for 10 seconds when using it, which is definitely going to be welcome. However, that is not the biggest selling point. The biggest selling point with this 3PG finisher, as I'm sure you guys are aware, is going to be the extremely long animation. This animation is going to clock in at between 12 and 14 seconds. So in general, this is going to be one of the longest finishers in the game, and therefore it is going to be extremely important and valuable for things such as Immortals, which is a point that we've already pointed out, but we will talk more about in this video later on. When it comes to card sets, of course, Ramlethal is not an SS or BS character, so she's not going to have access to some of the cards that you would normally come to expect. However, luckily, as a Guilty Gear fighter, the Guilty Gear set is likely to be the best overall option for her, and the one that I would recommend the most. At that point, though, if you don't have that set, however, I do recommend that you guys get it. If you don't, you could fall back on either either a 7 Deadly Sins set, or you could fall back on a 7 Knights set in order to help exploit her various dots. Otherwise, you can fall back on the general card sets that you would come to expect, such as an Akane, or even some of the other sets out there like a Gears of Fate, or so on and so forth. It really at that point just comes down to what game mode you're looking at and what it is you're trying to accomplish, but there are going to be several different options, but I do feel like the Guilty Gear set is the best of all of them. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the imprint stones. Of course, I'm going to recommend to you guys that you go with the attack imprint stones for the Guilty Gear collaboration fighters. And then when it comes to the Star and the Moon imprint stones, you always want to work with what you've got. If for whatever reason you got lucky enough to end up getting the projectile-based stones for either one of these for this particular typing, then that is of course going to be the way to go. But otherwise, the best thing to go with is just to apply some sort of buff to your Starlight or your Darkness damage, preferably attack stones if you have them. And that is going to do it for the overall kit, you guys. In general, some very long applications of dots, some amazing overall effects, and an amazing finisher, but let's see how it works in action. In general mobbing and bossing, Ramlethal is going to have very generous XY axis, as well as having some very nice overall animations on her skills that are going to have a very nice range, as well as being very quick. And she's also going to be able to do very respectable damage for a non-limited banner character. When it comes to this though, there is going to be a little bit that is left to be desired, as you will notice against high level mobs that Ramlethal's damage does begin to suffer and bear itself out and start to show that she is not going to be a limited banner character. However, against any of the lower level mobs, this character is going to be able to just wipe them off the board no problem. So this can come up especially in very high levels of Reviving Hell's Dungeon. However, in general, this shouldn't hurt her that much in things such as time attack, so that isn't going to be a major concern for her. However, being the fact that she has not cycled into the time attack pool yet, I have not been able to test her out there, but I would imagine, based solely upon the fact that she is going to have those really nice overall animations, she can group mobs like crazy, she has a very long 3PG finisher, and then she's also going to have really nice power charge rate, that this character is going to do just fine. But do keep in mind, against high level mobs, particularly high levels of Reviving Hell's Dungeon, her damage does begin to suffer a bit. When it comes to PVAI Ramlethal, based solely upon the fact that she is going to have such generous XY axis as well as range on her skills, she is going to be an absolute machine here. There's really not a situation that I've run into yet in PVAI where this character has not been able to just bully whatever is in front of her. She's also going to be able to charge her 3PG up extremely quick, and once you toss that out there, the fight's pretty much over. So in general, I don't have any complaints whatsoever here. When we get into Immortals, we start to get into what really makes this character so special. So as we've already established, she is going to boast that amazing leadership ability that is going to give the rest of the Guilty Gear fighters in the game their ability to get up and go when it comes to firing off their finishers more often. And as a result, this is going to make her the MVP for your Guilty Gear team in this type of mode. When it comes to Immortals in general for new players, this is an extremely important mode for people out there, for anybody really, because of the amount of free rubies that you can get for the first time clear, and then of course the rewards thereafter for clearing it are also going to be extremely important. So it is going to behoove you to go through and try to clear all of these Immortals as quickly as possible, and because of the Guilty Gear fighters having such long animations on their finishers, as well as the ability to fire off those finishers as quickly as they can, this is going to make Ramlethal just that much more important. If you are somebody that is getting into the game for the first time with this collaboration, I would say that Ramlethal is a must pull, especially for this type of mode. And if you're planning on going for the Guilty Gear fighters in general, you are going to see a ton of value from this leadership ability, but it doesn't stop there, because Ramlethal is still able to output really nice damage for a character that is not going to be a limited banner character, as we've established. So with that being said, Ramlethal can stand on her own. So in general, you guys, I think that it cannot go understated when it comes to this with Ramlethal, that she is going to be just so important for this mode. So if you're a new player out there and you're still on the fence as to whether or not you should be going for this character, keep in mind that the rubies that you invest in pulling for her, you could easily refund yourself by clearing a lot of these immortals as a result of having her, so definitely don't sleep on this character if you haven't finished immortals. As important as Ramlethal is going to be to new players out there for things such as immortals, she is going to be just as important against Omega Rugal in Guild Raid. When it comes to Ramlethal, this character feels like she was tailor-made for this mode in particular, and when it comes to Expert and Lunatic difficulty against Omega Rugal, Ramlethal is going to be the budget queen. I can't think of another character that has been released that is going to be this important for this mode for new players as Ramlethal is. A lot of this just based solely on the fact that she can output really good damage as a budget unit. She's going to have really nice overall range on her skills, so she's not going to miss very often. And when it comes to her overall shield shred, that is also something that is very important for her because she has a lot of multi-hits, and she also has really nice, long, generous overall dot applications as long as you are playing smart with the way that you use your skills, because you need to be wary of the fact that she is going to have double explosion, so that is something to keep in mind. It is going to require you to pivot from what you would be using from one mode to the next as far as these difficulties are concerned with your overall skill rotations, because you are definitely going to want to prioritize either your Starlight or your Darkness damage here depending on what mode we're talking, but she's also going to have that really long application on her core finisher as well, which is also extremely important, so keep that in mind. But in general, when it comes to Ramlethal's performance here, while she isn't going to be outputting the amount of ridiculous damage that we've come to expect from some of these limited banner characters, partially to do with the fact that she is going to be a normal AS character, and as a result she is not going to have as long of a awakening spam as you would like to see on some of these characters. That is just going to be something that is going to be natural towards any of these non-limited banner characters, so I'm not going to ding her for that. That doesn't necessarily become much of an issue either, considering the fact that at the end of the day, all you're really trying to accomplish here ideally is a one-key scenario for all these modes, and you don't necessarily need to be going in there and doing 2 or 3 billion damage against these characters. All you need to do is do the minimum, and this character can do that in spades, and there's really not a situation that I've run into with Guild Raid Omega Rugal where this character hasn't just been an absolute terror. So if you're a new player, this is the character you want for Guild Raid, because she is going to have extremely high value to you. At the end of the day, as a character that offers this much utility without needing SS or BS generic memories, Ramlethal is an absolute budget player's dream. She is going to offer you amazing performance in things such as Guild Raid Omega Rugal, and also if you are someone who is planning to heavily invest on the Guilty Gear collaboration as a whole, you are definitely going to want to consider picking this character up, especially if you still have not cleared out all the immortals, or you're still having trouble with the aforementioned Omega Rugal in Guild Raid. But in the end, you guys, I am extremely high on Ramlethal, as I've already mentioned. Of course, being the fact that she is a non-SS or BS character and does not have that really long awakening rotation, that means that she isn't going to be able to output the obnoxious amount of damage that you see from some of those limited banner characters as we've outlined here. However, that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot when you consider the fact that she can easily one-key Guild Raid Omega Rugal in Expert difficulty and Lunatic, thanks to the fact that she's not only going to have plenty of applications for her dots, but she's also going to have extremely long applications for her dots. She's going to have amazing shield shred, she has a ton of multi-hits, she has that extremely long 3PG finisher, and at the end, when we talk about Ramlethal, I do think that when it comes to the budget characters that we've had offered to us in the past, this is definitely going to be one of the best ones that we've ever seen. So in the end, you guys, that is my opinion when it comes to Ramlethal. I think this character has amazing value, especially if you're somebody just getting into the game. But what say you guys? Let me know in the comments section down below. I'm always excited to hear how you guys feel about these characters. But until the next video, I will see you guys then. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, and you guys take care. Peace.
Continue.